All right, that's 8 o'clock. Jewel?
Yes, sir. I wanted to start out by letting everyone know, as we sent out to the board yesterday in a message, that we have been experiencing some issues with Verizon service. And during the meetings today, you may experience lags or disconnections, but please stay on. It generally reconnects itself. And then also there's a water resources meeting planned immediately following the finance meeting. And to participate in that, you'll need to leave this meeting, go back to your calendar, and click on the links in the invite for the water resources meeting. And now to continue, good morning, board, staff, and members of the public. After my statement, the chairman will open the meeting and explain the rules for this electronic meeting. Please keep your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. The technical support team may proactively mute participants if the microphone is picking up on background noise. Board members should check to make sure their microphone is not muted before speaking. You may text me 540-336-3948 at any time during the meeting if you need technical assistance, and an IT support tech will call your phone to assist. I now turn the meeting over to Chairman Allen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jewel. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'll read the chairman's statement. In accordance with the governor's state of emergency declaration of executive orders regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors, County Ordinance, and General Assembly 2020 Budget Amendments 28 and 137, Loudoun Water will meet today in an electronic meeting. In compliance with these special procedures, only action items necessary to continue operations of Loudoun Water and discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities will be discussed during today's meeting. Reports and other meeting information are available on board docs. Public notice and meeting access information was provided on the Loudoun Water website. A recording of the meeting will be available in board docs at a link on the website. Board members wishing to speak are reminded to unmute and identify themselves by name so staff can accurately capture their comments. All items will be recommended to the November 12th, 2020 board meeting. The board secretary will now take a roll call attendance of committee members.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Here.
Mr. Byers. Mr. Byers. Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge that Chairman Kobliss, Mr. Bonfils, Mr. Sultan, and Jonathan Rock are also on the call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I hear a motion to approve it?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who made the original motion?
Brent made the original
Brent?
motion and Sean second.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Roll call. Mr.
Aye.
Allen, Mr. Byers, Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Unanimous, sir.
All right. The first item on the action list is the approval of the Howardsville Service Agreement by Jonathan Rack.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. I forgot when I accepted Carla's invitation to make this presentation that it was an 8 a.m. meeting, but made it here anyway. So the Howardsville Service Agreement is something that Loudoun Water staff has been working on for actually several years now. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the community needs and the proposal for solving the wastewater issues there, and then talk about Loudoun Water's role through the service agreement and the next steps, and then ask for your recommendation of approval. The background for Howardsville is that it's located in the rural policy area. It's outside of our central service area. Consists of 14 parcels along Green Garden Road. 9 of those have residential structures, and 5 of the parcels are vacant. Currently, those properties are served by inadequate or no on-site wastewater disposal systems. My recollection is that those lots don't perk, so septic systems are not working or are not practical. So there's a need for some sort of a community system. In 2018, the County Health Department determined that sewage issues constituted a health hazard and recommended that public wastewater be provided to the community. Next slide, please. This is an aerial photograph that shows you the location in the western end of Loudoun County. It's near the Willisville and St. Louis community systems. I believe that Howardsville is predominantly an African-American community, similar to Willisville and St. Louis in terms of its heritage. The highlights of the service agreement essentially are, well, I'm sorry, the next slide shows you a little bit more of the configuration of the properties along Green Garden Road. You can see it's a fairly compact area, but surrounded by rural land. And then the next slide gives you the highlights of the service agreement. Loudoun Water is going to design and construct the wastewater system in 2 phases for this particular community. The first phase, the design of which is well underway, is to construct a collection system that would collect the wastewater from each of the existing homes and basically have it flow to a tank where it will be stored and then periodically pumped out and trucked likely to the Broad Run wastewater treatment facility or another regulated wastewater treatment plant. The purpose for delaying the construction of the treatment plant, the treatment system, which will likely consist of a treatment system and then drain fields, is that staff and the design engineers believe that we need to collect more information about the flows, both in terms of volumes and strength of the waste, in order to be able to efficiently design the treatment system. So the collection system will operate for a couple of years. I think it's potentially as long as 5 years under the permit from the health department as a pump and haul. But during that period, the studies on the flow will be conducted. The treatment system final design will be done and then constructed so that ultimately there will be a treatment facility, treatment plant specifically for Howardsville. The design engineers have provided a number of budget estimates, and the most recent one, which has sort of been carefully gone over with the county, establishes a maximum budget for $3,798,020 in terms of third-party costs for engineering, design, and construction. We're not being reimbursed under the agreement for Loudoun Water staff time, and then ultimately there will be likely a deficit between the standard rates that will be collected from the homeowners and the actual cost of operations. So there are 2 ways in which Loudoun Water is contributing to the solution here, both in terms of its staff time and the design and construction oversight, and then in the long term in terms of what amounts to a subsidy for the operating costs of the system. Upon acceptance of the system, construction and acceptance, Loudoun Water will own, operate, and maintain the system, and customers will be assessed the central system rates. One other item I wanted to point out under the service agreement is that the homes that are there today will be connected without charging a connection fee or an availability fee. Essentially, that's all funded by county tax dollars. But the vacant lots that will benefit, obviously, from the construction of this system will be allowed to connect if they pay essentially a connection fee that Loudoun Water will collect, but then turn over to the county, and the county will determine the amount of that connection fee for reimbursement of its costs for design and construction. I think, okay, next steps. So we're asking for your approval, recommendation to the full board today. Then the county's uh, Finance and Government Operations and Economic Development Committee will consider it on November 10th. And then it'll come to the full board, Loudoun Water Board, on November 12th. We're asking in your motion that you allow some minor amendments based on final approval by legal counsel. I doubt that there's going to be much because we've very heavily negotiated this document involving County Attorney's Office and me over the last several months. And then the motion would authorize Carla to execute the agreement. And then we anticipate that the Board of Supervisors would approve the agreement on their end on November 17th.
Jonathan,
So-
Ms. Robles has a question. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry, I wasn't, apologies for not seeing it.
Jonathan, just a real quick question. What if the construction contract is considerably more than the $3 million that we've allowed for it? What happens?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. The contract basically has a provision that if the bids come in higher than the amount, which includes some contingencies in it, so hopefully it won't go over, then we would ask the county board of supervisors for the additional authorization of funds to pay the full amount. If they choose not to, then the construction would not go forward. There also is a provision, because this is a two-step process, that after the collection system has been approved, if the bids for construction of the treatment facility, which are included in that overall estimate of $0.7 million, come in over the authorized amount, then we would go back to the county and ask for authorization of the additional funds for construction of the treatment plant. And the way that the agreement is structured, there is not an anticipation that Loudoun Water would have to make up the difference. The expectation in the agreement for both phases is that the full costs of the collection system and the treatment system would be paid by the Board of Supervisors before we would proceed with each phase.
Jonathan, I just want to provide one point of clarification, and I'll ask Tom Lipinski to confirm that I'm correct. But I do believe that we have included some Loudoun Water costs in this budget.
Sorry.
Our practices for these community systems, the design and construction should be at no cost to Loudoun Water, and then our contribution comes in operating and maintaining the systems by assessing those central system rates. But I just want to confirm that with Tom Lipinski that the 3.7 includes some Loudoun Water labor. Is that correct, Tom?
It is, Carla, and it includes some costs we've already incurred that the county agreed in advance to reimburse us for the current design, and then that includes reimbursement for the future phases as well.
Thank you.
Sorry for that error.
No problem.
I think Mr. Campbell has a question.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan. How many, do we know now how many communities, how many little package plants we have in sort of the rural policy area? And Howardsville. What other ones do we have? I know we have others.
I'm going to defer to Carla or Tom to answer that question.
Yeah, hopefully Roddy's on. But the ones that have been developed because of health hazards would include Waterford, St. Louis, Aldie, Willisville. I think that's it.
Have we
And
done
then-
anything with Paonian Springs yet?
No, but we are, the feasibility study for that has been complete. And again, Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not developed yet. And of course, we also have the Raspberry Falls and those systems that are in the rural policy area as well.
As usual, Carla, spot on.
Thank you.
And do we also have a system down by the golf course there on Route 15. I'm blanking on the name on it at the moment, but we have pipes running through there, but we don't serve anything.
Creighton Farm.
Yes, we do.
Package plant there as well.
Okay, so Creighton Farms, we do provide sewer to Creighton Farms?
Yes.
Yes.
Some of the lots within that community,
Okay.
not all of it.
Great. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Allen has a question.
Thank you. This is kind of a CIP question, so I'm a little confused as to why we're having this pump and haul period. Shouldn't we be able to evaluate what the output will be from these homes? I mean, I know it's 600 gallons in Beacon Hill per day, and I don't know what it is for smaller homes, but you would think we would have data on that. So I'm just curious why we're not just going right to building the collection and treatment at the same time.
Right. Well, when we first started talking about that, and again, I want Roddy to jump in, but one reason also was system in there more quickly, which we will be able to do with pump and haul. But also, this area has very poor soils, and so it's going to be expensive treatment for that. So we want to make sure that we right size the plant. And these homes have never had a system before. So while we could make some assumptions about the flow, I think we felt more comfortable getting data, right size the plant. And in the meantime, while we're collecting data, it's really transparent to the community because nothing's going to change for them, whether they're getting pump and haul service or a treatment plant. It's really invisible to them. So we wanted to get a system in there that started collecting, transferred to a central location, and then right size the plant. Our concern, quite frankly, is that there's just not going to be enough flow to make the system work efficiently, which is probably what's going to happen. There's just not enough homes there, but we have to make it work. So again, kind of taking the time to analyze the flow. Roddy, can you add to that?
I think you nailed it pretty well. I mean, it is those couple of components. One is that, we really do believe that the flow generated from this community may be very different from our typical standard. And a lot of times, especially if we're looking at large development areas, we just use a very conservative number, and there's really no harm in having it be a little oversized. In this case, we have to make sure that the system will actually function and produce the kind of effluent it needs to produce. And as you mentioned, Carla, it's going to have to meet extremely stringent discharge limits because of the poor soils there. So, it is important that we get it, the right target for flow, and so that the system can operate properly. So I think there are a couple of really good advantages, and that other, of course, we identified that by moving forward with the collection system, with a pump and haul, we could get their problem resolved much more quickly, and then focus on the treatment aspect of it as a second phase.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Kelly
That
has
makes
a
sense.
question.
I still have a couple more
Oh, sorry.
while we're on me. It's okay. It says that the rates that we have to notify the customers of the rates that they're going to be spending. I'm assuming it's not a wealthy community. So are they aware that they're going to be paying what? This is just sewer, right?
Right.
Yes.
So have these rates been socialized with them? Do they know that it's coming?
Again, that's probably a Tom Lipinski confirmation question, but yes, I believe that they have been told that they will be assessed central system rates.
Okay. Because I assume they haven't been paying any septic bills at all.
No.
Okay.
Other than any normal maintenance of their
Right.
systems that are in place.
Okay.
Right.
And then the one other thing I have is they're responsible. If VDH says they have to abandon a well or a private on-site sewage system, it's the individual owner's lot cost. Do we anticipate them having some costs associated with that action? And will they be able to? What if they just don't do it because they don't have the money to do it? What's the remedy there?
is part of the agreement, I believe, is the county going to pay for that, Tom, to vacate those drain fields?
I think for anything that might be an issue with this initial installation, yes. I think that's more geared towards somebody who might choose to connect up in the future. If they choose to connect to the system and they have to abandon a drain field, the county has basically, advised them that that's on their own cost to make the connection and then abandon their drain field. The county may be available to provide them financial assistance at that point if that decision was made.
I think Savita may want to chime in on that. I see her hand up.
Yeah, Tom, you're exactly right. So each conversation we have with the homeowner, if they do, if they do have a system, and there's only, I think, 2 that actually have, or 3 that actually have truly functioning systems, they have been made aware that they will have to abandon their system and it will be at their expense. If they are not able to, or if they feel that they might qualify, family services with the county can step in to help them if they qualify for financial assistance to help them abandon their system.
Okay, thank you.
I think I remember, Savita, you can confirm it, that even things such as the lateral connections, family services is involved in subsidizing some of that, if I recall.
Yes, if the property owner, the homeowner qualifies or meets the income requirements, the family services will help them connect their home to the system.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Jewel. You may have already, I have 2 questions. You may have already covered the first. Are we being, Loudon Water being reimbursed for the pump and haul period?
I believe that only through the collection of the central system rates, so there's no separate payment for that. It would just come from the customer rates.
That's right.
So
That's
they're being charged the rates now, or as they start the pump and haul, so they'll start paying those central system rates right away
right. They'll start paying
After
as soon
they
as
connect.
the system. Right.
once they connect.
Right.
And then 2, I assume with the vacant lots that the treatment plant is being built to accommodate those if they ever come online initially. There's capacity to handle those vacant lots.
Right. I think it's a combination of 2 things. It's collecting the data from the homes that do connect immediately to know how to size the plant. And then we do have to take into consideration the other lots within that service area, or that area, to make sure that we could accommodate them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I think your motion is on the, Brian, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Someone make that motion? I'll make the motion if I'm allowed. I move the board approve the Howardsville service agreement with Loudoun County as approved by legal counsel. Second?
Second, Sean, second.
Jewel, roll call?
Yes, sir. If there are no other questions or comments, I'll take the roll call vote. Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Byers, Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
and Mr. Allen, would you like this on consent or action, sir?
Well, I'm a little confused. I know this has to be approved by the full board on the 12th, so I think we probably have to put it on action and make it part of this presentation for approval. My thinking anyway, unless anyone disagrees.
All right.
I think that's good, Terry.
I agree.
Okay. All right.
Thank you,
action
sir.
It is. Thank you, Jonathan.
You're welcome.
All right.
The next item is the approval of reduction of approved user rates by Mr. Carnes.
Good morning. As you mentioned, I'm here to seek your approval to reduce the previously approved user rate increase for 2021. I'll talk a little bit about the background, some of the effects of the pandemic to date at Loudoun Water. what the impact of reducing the rate increase will be, and then what our recommendation is. In 2018, Loud and Water contracted with Stantec Consulting to perform a user rate study. And in December of 2018, the board approved a 3.5% user rate increase that would be effective January 1st of each year for 2019, 2020, and 2021. Last month, the board requested that staff perform an analysis of what reducing the 2021 3.5% user rate would be. So just a couple items on the effects of the pandemic to date. In March, Loud and Water eliminated all late fees and disconnections for non-payments. We have started sending reminder notices just to let folks know that they have outstanding bill balances. As of last week, we had approximately 709 customers who have contacted Loud and Water and requested payment plans. Also, as of last week, we had approximately $700,000 in outstanding balances that are considered past due. And especially on our residential side, customer growth has been slower than anticipated this year. So this chart is to show you what the impact of reducing rates would be. We calculated an average bill of 16,000 gallons a quarter. And you can see in 2019, with the 3.5% user rate, the quarterly bill was $189. And then in 2020, with the rate increase, it went up to $196. And then in 2021, we have 3.5%, 3%, and 2.5%. And you can see that each 0.5% in reduction of the user rate equates to a $1 reduction in the average quarterly bill. So a little bit more about what reducing the rates would do to Loud and Water. For every 1% reduction in the rate increase, so from going from 3.5% to 2.5%, equates to a decrease in operating revenue of approximately $1 million. Either reduction in user rate to 3.5% or 2.5% will still allow Loud and Water to meet all of our debt coverage ratios. So we have no concern about meeting our coverage ratios by reducing the rate. Later this meeting, you'll be presented with the proposed 2021 operating budget, and that was developed assuming that the rate would be reduced to 2.5%. We will present you a very conservative operating expense budget, which will allow us to absorb the reduction in revenue. And I did want to note that this reduction in revenue will have no impact on our ability to provide high quality water and wastewater service to our customers. So staff's recommendation is to reduce the 3.5% user rate increase to 2.5% effective January 1st of 2021. This will still allow us to meet all of our debt coverage ratios, and this revenue reduction has already been accounted for in the 2021 operating budget. So this is the recommended motion, but I am happy to answer any questions.
When do we go back on? So if we go 2.5% in 2021, what do we do in 2022? Do we then, is it a 3.5% increase? How do we play catch up? I mean,
well, so we'll be doing a user rate study next year to look at what the rates will be for 2022, 2023, and 2024. We don't believe that reducing the rate by 1% will cause us to have a bigger increase next year than we would have anticipated normally. I don't think this will cause us to have a jump in increases next year, no.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Mr. Koblis has a question.
Hey, Brian. Just because half my job is besides engineering is marketing, are we going to somehow put this out there that we're doing this? And because we are doing it for the betterment of the community. So, I mean, I think we should, get some kind of kudos for it, if at least putting it on our website or something like that.
Sure. Yes. I would defer to Sue Crosby on this, but yes, we would promote this on our Facebook page, on our website. We through our Loudon Water Connect. I'm not sure if Sue wants to jump in on any other ways we communicate with customers, but yes, we would certainly notify all of our customers that this was happening.
Yeah, Brian, you're absolutely right. We can do messaging on bills, social media, website. We'll also be doing presentations to the Board of Supervisors. So we also have some other channels. So when we deem those appropriate, we can definitely get the message out there.
Anyone else have any other questions? All right. Someone make a motion?
I move the board approve the reduction of the approved 3.5% user rate increase effective January 1, 2021 to 2.5%. Sean, you have to do.
Thank you.
I'll second it, it's Brent.
No other questions or comments? I'll take the roll call vote. Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Byers, Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, consent or action, sir?
Probably consent, but can we mention it so the board knows? Does that make sense? I mean, I hate to have it just swallowed up in the consent agenda in one motion and not have the rest of the board do what we're doing, but.
I think the way to address that, Mr. Allen, would be to for you to cover it in your meeting summary.
Okay, that sounds perfect. Great idea.
Yeah, Terry, I was also going to mention it too, but that's probably better that you put it in your summary. Thanks.
Good ideas, both of you. Thank you. All right, so let's put it on consent, and then I'll mention it in the meeting notes.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the list is the approval of the banking service contract. Once again, Brian.
Sorry, you're going to hear me a lot this meeting. So Loudon Water has a contract with Wells Fargo to provide banking services, and that contract is due to expire December 31st of 2020. So staff prepared and advertised an RFP for banking services in July, and we received 3 proposals on August 28th from JP Morgan, United Bank, and Wells Fargo. An internal evaluation committee of 3 members independently reviewed the proposals, and the top ranked firm for each independent reviewer was Wells Fargo. So staff is recommending that we move forward with Wells Fargo. They offered the lowest price for their fees, and all interest earnings will offset the fees associated with the banking services. We have had very few minor issues with Wells Fargo over the last 7 years and have a good working relationship with them. And then also Wells Fargo does provide these same banking services to both Fairfax Water and Prince William Service Authority. So we're asking for your approval to award the banking services to Wells Fargo for fiscal years 21 through 25, and there will be 2 one-year renewal options available as part of this contract. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Brian, real quick question. So I'm reading this right. It's not costing us any money to have our money in their bank, right?
Correct. As long as we keep enough money in our bank account, then yes. Okay. And their fees were low enough and their earnings credit were low enough that they have the we would have to keep a very minimal amount in this bank account in order to offset our fees. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion from somebody.
This is Sean. I'll move the board award banking services contract to Wells Fargo for the fiscal years 2021 through 2025.
I'll second it.
Thank you. No other comments or questions? I'll take the roll call vote. Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Mr. Byers? Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you. And consent or action, sir?
Consent.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the list is the approval of write-off of uncollectible accounts. Mr. Carnes.
So this year we have approximately 101 utility and general billing accounts with a past due balance of over $100, for which all of our standard collection efforts have been exhausted, which include mailing reminder notices, phone calls, searching our database to see if the customers have moved to another part of our service area. And so the total balance that we're asking to write off this year is $38,985.09, which represents 0.04% of the $94.9 million in operating revenue for service charges in 2019. That percentage is consistent with what we've seen the last 4 years. The last 4 years, the percentages have ranged between 0.04% and 0.06%. So this is very similar. I did want to note that you'll see there that of the approximately $39,000, about $10,000 is from a single invoice. That is a final bill from a hotel that was sold, and we have been unable to get the previous owner to provide payment for that invoice. So I just wanted to highlight that approximately a quarter of our write-off is one invoice this year. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have about this.
Mr. Allen?
I have a question. Do we have the ability to file liens on some of these charges?
So we do file liens, and that is part of our process. But if sometimes the property gets sold and we're not notified, and then that kind of eliminates our ability to use that lien. But we also do participate in the Virginia Debt Set-Off Program. So if a customer pays taxes to the state of Virginia and they owe us money, we get notified and we will receive, if they are getting a tax refund, we can receive some of their money.
Yeah, it just seems crazy that a hotel we can have a lien filed on the hotel, but the transaction can go through, and during that closing, we don't get paid.
So these are really these are final bill accounts. So for instance, if the hotel had been current on all of their bills prior to this one, they never would have gotten to us filing a lien. This is just the final bill for the water usage when they were the owner, so we would not have the ability to file a lien on that property.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes it's just a timing issue. And sometimes with a quarterly billing cycle, sometimes we do miss the opportunity. It's not a lot, but sometimes it's just a matter of slipping them through there and timing is off.
Yeah, I mean, it's too bad for charges that big.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get a little more nimble. I don't know how in the future, especially with a commercial property.
Right.
And then do we do anything on these residential ones? Do we ding their credit rating? Do we report these charges to some authority, or?
No.
We don't use credit bureau. Right, Brian?
All right. It is what it is.
Mr. Chairman, on the liens, if I recall correctly, the statute doesn't allow us to file the lien until the amount is, I think, 60 days overdue. So that may explain, particularly with the quarterly billing, why we didn't file a lien on the hotel. And with a larger commercial user, those charges can mount up in that period before we have the opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. All right, so we need a motion to write off these uncollectible amounts.
Mr. Chairman,
Sean, I'll make them. Okay, go ahead, Brian. A second.
I have Mr. Campbell with the motion and Mr. Kelly with the second. Are there any other questions or comments? I'll take the roll call vote. Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Byers? Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
And Mr. Enter action, sir.
Consent.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the list is the 2021 budget.
It's the Brian.
Yes, so this is the proposed 2021 operating budget. I'll go over a little bit about what the process was, the key issues. We'll talk some about the revenues, a little bit about the expenses, and then touch on some of the drivers for the expenses. Before I go through the process, I just want to thank all of the other directors and managers for all their hard work on creating this budget. This is truly a collaborative process, and it wouldn't be possible without all of them. So today we're asking you to endorse the 2021 operating budget. Next month at your joint finance and CIP committee, you'll see the proposed 10-year capital improvement plan, as well as the 2021 capital spending plan. And then at your December 10th meeting, you'll be asked to approve the combined 2021 operating budget and capital spending plan. So some of the key issues, as mentioned earlier, the budget was created assuming a 2.5% rate increase, as well as a 2% increase to availability charges. That was approved also in December of 2018 as part of your 3-year rate structure. Growth in 2021 is projected at 2,200 ERCs. We wanted to note that this is actually a deviation from the county projection. The county projection for 2021 is 2,900 ERCs. However, we performed an analysis on what growth has been in 2020 and what our commercial plans are showing for 2021, and we felt it was prudent to reduce the projection from 2,900 to 2,200 ERCs. Just to note that for 2020, growth was projected at 2,900 ERCs. Are there any questions about that?
Yes, I have a quick one.
Mm-hmm.
How often does the county update their projections?
I will ask for help on that. Carla, do you know?
Well, there's typically a fiscal impact committee that that develops these growth projections, and I know that Robin Bailey let us know that they've just kicked off that committee again. They hadn't really done an analysis since 2018, so they skipped a year in there. So the latest information we have is 2018, but they're working on that now. So they were doing it every year, but unfortunately we missed a year in there. So, but they're back at it. So we should have some updated numbers actually, next year on the growth projections.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Brian, it's Mark.
Yes.
So, I think we'll know, we can already see that our ERCs are considerably lower than we projected for this year. Are we prepared that if, let's say, that it's significant lower again next year, that we got it covered in this budget?
I think so. I think based on what growth we've seen historically on the residential side, and we've gone through an analysis of what the commercial plans we have in our pipeline, I think for the next 5 years, and when we think they'll connect, that we feel pretty confident that 2,200 is a solid number for next year.
And I think it's important to know that once we get the budget through and it's approved, then we update the 5-year plan of finance. And that's really where these growth projections have an impact, because that impacts how much we may have to borrow in the future based on the capital program. So in early 2021, the finance committee will see that updated 5-year plan, and we'll know what this growth is going to do to our borrowings going forward.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I know we were looking at borrowing 20 million based on the last 5-year plan that we had. I can't remember what was our ERC projection. And was it 2,900, or it had to be higher than what we're currently projecting?
Yeah, that's true. When we presented to you in August, we were using the 2,900 ERCs for next year as part of our 5-year plan.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So we'll touch on the revenues here. Total revenues for 2021 are projected at 148.3 million, and that is a decrease of 5.2 million or 3.39% from the 2020 adopted budget. And that is all attributed to the decrease in ERCs from 2,900 in 2020 to 2,200 in 2021. Operating revenues are projected to be 109.6 million. And that's your user rates for services, and then your plan review, inspection fees, and other charges. And that does include the 2.5% rate increase and the 2,200 new connections. So on the operating revenue side, it's actually an increase of $5 million from the 2020 adopted budget and an increase of $6.5 million from the projected actual. Non-operating revenues are projected at 38.8 million, and that is a decrease of 10.2 million from the 2020 adopted budget. Again, that is all based on the reduction in ERCs from last year. Last year, our availability revenue was budgeted at $45,200. So expenses, total expenses for 2021 are projected at 148.1 million. That is an increase of 3.4 million or 2.37% from the 2020 adopted budget. And that 3.4 million is almost entirely attributable to increase in our wholesale costs for Fairfax and DC Water, as well as personnel expenses. So operating expenses, they're projected to be 136.9 million. When you take depreciation out of that, the operating expenses are 75.5 million, and that's personnel, contractual services, materials, supplies, and other services and charges. And that is a minor increase of 2.9 million from the adopted budget, and that 2.9 million is, again, pretty much all wholesale costs and personnel. Yes, Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, just a quick question. What's the SG&A that is there like a standard or a best practice SG&A for water utilities? Where do we fall on that?
I don't think we're out of line with what I've seen from other utilities, but I don't know if there's a standard. I don't know if Carla has an opinion.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, you could certainly look into that, but
you know, like what percentage of our expenses is SG&A compared to everything else?
Right. Yeah,
I can get that for you.
I mean, we can certainly look into it and get back to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I know, you know, corporate world has we'll peg it at various standards, you know, 6%, stuff like this, but I don't know that that's fair for a utility. So I was just trying to get a sense of that.
Right. I mean, the bulk of our operating expenses are fixed really for either operating our own plants or, you know, buying wholesale. But yeah, we can look into that for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Our budget is considered very conservative, and we get that feedback from the rating agencies as well, that we're pretty tight on our projections.
Yeah. Has COVID increased the cost of employees and SG&A as they're trying to set up, you know, remotely or things like this? Has there been an increase in cost, or has there been a net reduction?
I think it's minimal. If any, I guess it would be more of an IT related expense, and I think Mike could chime in if he thinks that's material. But it's really kind of working status quo, just in a different location right now. So I would say there's not been a huge impact on the personnel side of things. Where we are seeing some savings would be in off-site trainings, travel-related expenses, things like that. But otherwise, from a personnel perspective, I don't think that we've had significant increases or decreases in that way. From the
Oh, go ahead.
From the pandemic, I just don't think there's been a huge impact on our expense.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Mike.
That's helpful.
This is Mike Beardsley. From an IT standpoint, we've had really no significant additional expenses to deal with the pandemic. Our biggest expense has been purchasing headsets for remote workers. Otherwise, we were well positioned to deal with this.
That's great. So it's fair to say that generally speaking, our organization really hasn't been impacted financially in any material way as a result of this COVID crisis.
Well, what I would say is, from an expense perspective, no. I think it's still to be determined on the revenue side what we're going to see. You just approved the write-offs of a really immaterial amount for the amount of revenues we get. Right now, we have outstanding balances of over 700,000, which is higher than we're used to. And so we don't know what will happen with those. I mean, we have over 700 customers who have been willing to make payment plans. But when push comes to shove, will we still have balances that we need to write off as uncollectible? That's yet to be seen. We're able to absorb that now, again, through this prudent expense planning, but I think that's yet to be seen on the revenue side.
That's a great point. All right, thanks.
Sure.
Mr. Allen?
Yeah, just to dovetail off of the COVID topic, I remember like a year ago, we didn't want to sell some land because we might want to expand the administrative building. This is probably for Carla, the question, as you look into the future, I know there's a lot of talk on Wall Street and in the papers about how, you just don't need as much admin space. Companies don't, as they once thought they did. Do you think, as a result of COVID, that we don't need to bring as many people back into the office when things return to normal? And also, we probably don't need as much admin space going forward in the future as we thought. Is that a fair statement?
I think it is a fair statement. I think that we will see a different workforce when we do come back into the office. I don't expect that you will have 5 days a week, full time, everyone at their desk. I think that our IT capabilities have proven themselves, and I think we're going to just see a different way to work, and it definitely affects the space as well. I mean, one of the reasons that we had talked about a second facility at the admin campus was, more talking about that customer service and a public space, meeting space to keep public out of the admin building. That may be something the board wants to entertain sometime in the future. But I think from what it will look like is going to look very different. And it's something that we have to be cognizant of as we move forward. Now, it doesn't mean that we're not going to grow. And so if every employee that you hire if our philosophy is every employee you hire needs a space, then we still need space. But again, I think what this has done for us is really open up our minds to being more flexible with how we bring people in and how they work.
Thank you.
Sure.
So a little bit more about the expenses. Depreciation, which is non-cash, is only projected to increase 0.9 million from the 2020 adopted budget. And then your non-operating expenses are projected at 11.1 million, which is a slight decrease from the 2020 budget, which was 11.5 million. And that is largely due to the refunding bonds that we issued in late 2019. So a little bit about the expenses. As mentioned, it's 148.1 million projected for next year, and that is a $3.4 million increase from the 2020 adopted budget. And as you can see, that is driven by two things: personnel and contractual services. And the contractual services is the wholesale cost. Other than that, you can see materials and supplies slightly went up. Other services and charges decreased. Depreciation went up a little bit, and then principal and interest decreased. So as has been mentioned before, this is a very conservative budget for next year. And with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brian.
Welcome.
All right, this is.
So just this would go to your December board meeting.
Okay, so we don't have to motion this. It's just going to be part of the joint. This is part of the joint CIP Finance Committee meeting, correct?
So this would not go to the joint meeting next month. The joint meeting next month would be strictly the CIP, the items. So I believe we're asking for your endorsement to put this on the December board agenda.
Okay. I'm sorry, I got logged out of board docs for some reason.
No problem.
Jewel logged me out, I think.
It's always me.
So do we have a motion? Do we need a motion?
You do need a motion,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kelly, do you have a question, sir?
Yes, thanks, Jewel. Just following up on what Terry was just saying. So we're just approving the operating budget today, not the capital improvement plan or capital spending plan. That's not incorporated into the budget.
That's correct. That will be presented at the at your joint meeting next month.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. I'll make a motion to approve the 2021 operating budget. Jewel, Sean.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second it.
Brett? No other questions or comments? I'll take the roll call vote. Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Byers? Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
And Mr. Allen, this will go to the December board agenda as consent or action.
Action.
Thank you very much.
Okay, some informational items. Mr. Carnes is up again, the quarterly investment review.
So our total portfolio at the end of September was a little under 298 million. And you can see how that's broken down between government agencies, municipal bonds, commercial paper, corporate bonds, and liquidity, which includes LGIP. That's the majority of that. So some of the trends, you can see our portfolio went up a little bit from June, and the yields, no surprise, have all decreased.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we had 46 million in maturities during the quarter, and you can see the yields were all over 1.5, and we invested 60, and we got 0.46%. So that was disappointing, but not unexpected. And I did want to note, as we've talked about before, we do have a lot in LGIP, and so we're slowly trying to move some of that money out and into other areas as the LGIP rate continues to decrease. So that's really what we're looking at for this quarter, is just reinvesting the amounts that we have coming due, and then moving some more money out of LGIP into other areas to try to get better yields. That's all I have for that, unless there are any questions.
I have a quick question. What's the longest dated maturity that we can buy in governments? Is it
We can go out 5 years.
Okay. Now, do you know what the 5-year note yields are? Higher than the, they gotta be
They
higher.
are kind of all over the place. I think one of the ones I got recently was maybe 0.6. We had invested in corporate bonds earlier this year out to 5 years, and we got some good yields at that time. Yeah.
I mean, I see in the portfolio allocation, we have a target for that liquidity of 15%, and we're at 30%. And then we have a target of 20% on treasuries, and we have 0. So that's the area you're talking about in the coming.
Correct. Yeah, and so LGIP until recently had a very good yield, and so it made more sense just to keep a good amount of money in there. But now that's flipping, that's what we're working on now, is moving that money out of LGIP and into other areas, and treasuries is certainly one of those areas where we'll be moving money.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Mr.
the
Kelly?
Swap. I mean, right now the 5-year treasury is at 34 basis points. So pretty bad. Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Ryan, I know a couple of years ago we ventured into buying commercial paper. There was a lot of discussion about that. It's a little bit riskier investment. What's our thoughts on future purchases of that? We're at 40 million today. Are we standing still? I notice it's being considered as maybe an increase. And what's our thought on that investment?
Yeah, we haven't bought any recently, but as the LGIP rate has dropped, that's something that we've considered. When we get the offers, we always look at where the commercial paper is being offered from, and we strictly stick to domestic, issuers. But so, because we have in the past, I've gotten offers from banks that I just didn't feel comfortable with. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, that's fine. Just kind of curious. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is we are allowed to do certificates of deposit. We haven't done them in the past just because the rates have been so low, but that might be something we want to consider now as well.
Okay, so we're on to the monthly financial summary.
Bear with us, we're bringing that report up.
So there isn't much to discuss here. Revenues, are above expenses as they typically are. Total revenues are at 110.5 million. The forecast was 116.3. That's mostly due to the decrease in availability charge revenue. And total expenses are at 97.4 million. So ERCs, I did want to note, so at the end of September, we were at 1,799. However, in October, we did receive 3 payments from data centers. So our total has jumped up to 2,322, and our budget for October was 2,417. So we're still under. That certainly made a large jump this month. Capital contributions total 31.5 million, which is 3.8 million from developer contributions and 27.7 million in availability charges. Total capital spending, the mid-year reprojection was for 64.5 million through the end of the year. Through September, we're at 41.8 million. of which 18.4 million was funded by user rates and 23.4 million was funded by availability charges. And as just mentioned, our total cash and equivalents at the end of September was just under 298 million, and the weighted average yield was 1.04%.
Mr. Kobliss?
Yeah, Brian, can you go back to the ERC line?
Sure.
Yeah, that one, that's good. So next year we're budgeting 2,200, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
Now, when we budgeted the 2,900, did we do that because we thought that was going to come in, or did we make it so that our expenses would be to cover, you know, to be as much as 2,900 ERCs?
The 2,900 for last year came directly from the county. We just took the county number and plugged that in.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So as you can see, our residential numbers are at the end of October will be around 943, and the data centers will be almost 1,300. So the data center connections are still outpacing the residential connections.
Well, I'm personally glad that we're bringing some of this analysis in-house, because it doesn't sound like the county, for whatever reason, is doing it as much as they should. So thank you for doing it.
You're here.
All right, I think if there's any questions, we have a joint CIP finance meeting on Tuesday, November 17th. And other than that, we're done. So I need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, this is Sean, so moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. And I'll just also remind anyone that's participating in the next meeting that you'll need to leave this meeting, go to your calendar, and click the links for the Water Resources meeting to participate. Roll call. Pardon.
Does that have a scheduled start time?
It is advertised as immediately following the Finance Committee meeting.
Okay. How do the other people know when the Finance Committee is over? I'm just curious.
Carla?
Great. So Mark Peterson and I are contacting our the outside group now. We would ask that maybe we give 5 to 10 minutes just to get them on board, but you can certainly go out and join the other meeting, and we'll just wait.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I'll take the roll call vote for the motion to adjourn. Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Mr. Byers? Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned at 9:08.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.